Hello and welcome to Stampscapes Friday Night Live. We're going to do something a little bit different, for me at least. I tend to do scenes that are fairly full in terms of the connective types of images and textures that will kind of link up all of the separate imagery into one kind of cohesive composition. But I thought, one of the things I don't do too often is I don't do kind of more minimalist types of strategies with the imagery, but I really should, more often. And what I mean by that is just kind of doing a more minimal approach, which tends to bring a little bit more, I guess, focus to the actual individual image, which can be good at times, especially if you want to come up with something a little bit faster. Okay, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can start off with kind of existing backgrounds, like this vintage type of paper. Here's a wood grain paper. We have our various things like holographics, where the kind of the inherent excitement already exists in the surface themselves. But you can also come up with just different types of stamp usage, for different types of looks. Okay, so what I mean by that is instead of doing, I don't know, a certain number, and there's no set number where one, type of landscape is going, considered full and one kind of more minimal. I guess it depends on the area that you're doing too. But it's kind of more of the feel of the piece, okay? So I thought I would do a few different compositions here. I don't have any kind of like specifically in mind, but I thought I would just come up with them on the fly. So here's a set right here, one of the new sets that features some snowy cabins and some of the snow dusted trees here, and I thought I would do something with the trees here and going back in perspective here, and I'll try to come up with something fairly interesting with my minimal usage. All right, I'm going to be kind of going against my, I don't know, instincts here, I think, in terms of the filler imagery. Hello, Linda and Sherry, how are you? All right, so let's see how this goes here. All right, let's see. I don't do this too often, folks. And I'll try to do this over. I just got to get in the swing of it here. Okay, so I'm going to do something that I used to do a lot when I was teaching classes. I would use color schemes and not really color schemes, but the values range, I guess, to create depth within a scene. Okay, so let's do that on this first one right here. Let's see. Should I go with the dark blue or should I use black as my darkest color here? Let's go with black here. Should I go with the stays on black? Yeah. Let's do my hybrid. Okay, so we're going to do a range of blue tones and black here for this. All right. Let's go right here. This would look, I think this composition would look even better if I was doing more of the bookmarky type of thing like last week here. How is everyone? I hope you all had a nice week. Hello, Froggy Fresh. Wow, good to see ya. How are things going? How's the household? How's the pups? How's the trains and projects? Okay, let's go with some trees like that. And let's see, should I use the same one? Let's go with the smaller one here. We're running out of space. Standard 4¼ by 5½. Let's go with the smaller image here. Okay, so in my workshops, I used to do this thing where we do a value range. And, they would grab their pads and just kind of line up some kind of color scheme, and it would go from, you know, dark to light, and the darker colors would represent the imagery that was closer to us visually, and they would utilize these colors within their color range to stamp out, you know, either the same object or similar objects, you know, so trees like this, within that range, and that would separate objects in terms of visual distance. So in other words, closer objects were, you know, darker, and mid-ground images would be kind of in the medium tones, and the lightest ones would represent, you know, the most distant of objects. So it pushes depth, like, you know, we see out kind of in nature or whatever in lighting scenarios. Okay, so this is the blue. This is a Prussian blue here. I'm kind of wiping out the bottom part of it where it goes into this tree below it, just so that it doesn't obscure too much of that black tree right there. Black stamp tree. I mean, it does. This Prussian blue is pretty dark, but see where that transitions right down there a little bit lighter. So it's a little bit of a lighter blue than the top one, right around in this area right here. Okay. And then let's go to the next one right here. So the whole idea of this video is like minimalistic composition. So you can see I still like a lot of kind of depth in my scenes. But we'll just do like, I figured that little sledder kind of walking through here. Okay, this is the Bahama blue right here. And I'll color this in later too, but let's do, I don't know, there might be a couple impressions with this color here. Well, Cynthia, the doggies are great. Good to hear. I haven't seen, have you been posting on Facebook? I usually saw like photos or something of, see, was it a Saint Bernard or that you had or something like that? Okay, so little things like that, and let's do this little slider like this. Okay. All right, now, depending on where I stamp this little slider guy, if I stamp him right here, I would probably do them in a darker blue like this, because that represents that distance in space, you know, this kind of area right here, right up here. So if I stamp them right there, I would do them in that lighting right there. I mean, you don't have to. It could be just in black, you know, you can color them in. But I think I'll have this little guy kind of right down in this space right in here. And they will be within that, I don't know, whatever, that value range right in there. Okay, and let's go with our little snow. This is off the other set right here, which hopefully gets to Linda before too long. And anyone else in Canada that I shipped sets to with the, there's a postal strike going on right now. I don't know if it was you, Linda, but someone is mentioning that there's going to be like, they're going to work it out where it's like some kind of rotational type of thing or something. All right, I am stamping this one out in blue though, because you know, the footprints in the snow. I'm not going to have it in as heavy of a kind of a shadow type of thing. Just go like that right in there. So get this little kind of minimal type of whatever compositional strategy like this. Now I've left this a little bit lighter, so you know, like a little quote stamp or something like that would be kind of cool. And then just doing some little minimal things. I call when I see these kind of more, I don't know, kind of more like isolated image types of things with text. I tend to see it as something a little bit more graphic, and I do like that look because I love like layouts and magazine layouts and stuff like that. You know, advertisements. I used to love looking at all that type of stuff. You know, like graphic designs, which was one of those other things I was thinking about majoring in school. Okay, I'm just going to give this a slight shadow texturing underneath here, but we'll leave it really kind of minimal still. Go like this. Yeah, so in like advertising art or something like that, you know, like a lot of the text and fonts and, you know, that type of thing are going to add to the, you know, the whatever, you know, the visuals, the graphics. And I'm going to do this, I'm going to color in, you know, in a range of blue tones, just like we have in the background. So you can do this with colored pencils or, you know, in my classes where we did these types of value range, kind of depth exercises. What they would do is they would use the same inks that they use to stamp out their objects in kind of the sponging method, and that would bring everything together. Okay, but I'm just going to do this with colored pencils. These are close enough to the you know, the colors that they were stamped out into. So I'm just starting with I start light and I work darker. This is kind of smearing some of my black here a little bit because my ink is a little bit juicy still. But kind of getting some of that black in there is kind of creating a little bit of a grayscale, which looks okay. This little kid's on his way to his favorite, whatever his favorite slope. And he can come into the trees a little bit. Okay, I'm starting to really kind of muck this up. It's kind of a little bit wet in there, so my colored pencils again are kind of blurring. I'll color it later, but what I would want to do is I just want to accent a little of these tree limbs like that with some color. Let me do it like this too. This is a little bit of a brighter blue here. I stamped this tree out in a hybrid ink, so it has a little bit of that black pigment ink in there. That's oil-based, so it's creating a little bit of smudging. If I would have stamped it out in dye-based, it would have been fine. Okay, so let's go to the darker blue, which is like this one right here. It's a little bit of a navy. I'll kind of hit that a little bit more in the shadow areas and try to create a decent transition here. In other words, I'm not going to take that darker blue as far as I did with the lighter one that I just used. This is a semi-gloss cardstock, so it's not giving me a lot of tooth to grab into. This pencil right here feels really hard. Let me see if this blue right here is a little bit softer. Yeah, this one's a little bit softer. I can get a better application of it here. They're in rotation now. Okay. Yeah, yeah. I hope those stamps get out to you. So when you told me about that, I don't know if I mentioned this. It's like I looked up everyone else that ordered from Canada the new images, new sets, and I dropped them a note. It's like, by the way, on the way. But everyone knew, of course. They're keeping everyone's abreast of that. All right, so going in here and filling in like that, but I don't know. That's pretty much done to me. So just some trees and this little figure in here. I mean, you can make it, a little bit more complex, but I think this is, I tend to see this as kind of like a nice, as I call it, kind of more of a minimal composition right in here. Now you can stamp out some sort of like word stamp in here, or you can stamp it on something else and put it in here. If I was going to stamp something like a word stamp in here, but it's like, oh, I didn't leave enough room. So I think something stamped in black across this would be strong enough, especially if it was something bold. I don't know what it would say, like a word stamp as opposed to a quote or something like that. What you can do is you can just kind of knock this back a little bit with some white pigment ink, and you can make this, I don't know, whatever, 10% lighter, 15% lighter for your word stamp to stand out a little bit more. But let's do this right here. I like this look right here. What I'll do, just because this is, fairly minimal looking composition, we can just make it look a little bit more complex by varying the lighting on the objects and textures. So it's a little bit softer, lighter, and it just kind of varies this in here a little bit. I think I smudged out a little bit of that blue in there, but that's all right. But you can see these changes in these areas within the scene right there that are pretty fun to do. So let's see here. I meant minimal in terms of image usage. Yeah. I still love doing all these little textures in here. This is the stuff that I really have fun kind of adding in, those little details. Okay, so let's add in a little bit of additional, snowy textures on some of these limbs in here. And again, it's kind of just expanding on that kind of textural range of the piece. So these other pens right here don't work as good as my, whatever I forgot what these ones were called. I don't know. It's in my Amazon cart. Okay, here we go. Amazon storefront, not cart. All right, and that should, I think, do it right here. A little bit of a, like I said, like some kind of quote stamp right here, let it snow or whatever, up there would be good on this one. Matte this off in some kind of nice framework. Let me see if I have one around here that I can put this in. I would show you what this looks like if I had like a silver frame thing that I already matted up. Let me see right here. I think this one's like too tall right here, but I think I would throw this one in like a blue type of thing, or the silver like around it like that would look, look pretty cool like that. All right, so anyway, trees and a little kid like that, no cabin. I mean, you can, in another scenario, I'd put some kind of cabin in the background like that. I would probably put some additional textures in here, some little twigs or something like that would be going on in here. And I'd probably kind of, I'd vignette it a little bit more, But I don't know. I like the look of this scene right here. Let's do something with some of these other types of papers like this. I was thinking, one of the things that got me kind of thinking about kind of more of this minimalistic type of thing was I was thinking about using some of these clouds in here. And these clouds like that, or some other type of texturing like that, can really kind of create a nice framing and kind of a built-in, I don't know if it's a vignette, but, framing device. And you can just put whatever you want in the middle there. On some kind of paper like this aged paper, that would be really perfect for really anything if you want it to look aged, but I think it really looks fun with some Halloween types of imagery, just to kind of frame things off and kind of like some kind of little spooky kind of device here. So let's try some of that. All right. She's snoring rather loudly right now. Yeah, wasn't something going on with the Saint Bernard? I don't know, it was like a year ago or something like that. I don't know if I'm kind of imagining it or something, but I don't know. I thought I had to take her to the vet or something like that for something that was going on. Blue Mountain Stamps. Does anyone remember Blue Mountain Stamps? That sounds vaguely familiar to me. I don't know. How about anyone else? What's your question on them, Froggy? Okay, I just stamped this or inked this up with black here. We'll do some other applications of it in the cloud and, some light baby blue or something like that. We'll do some kind of little minimalist compositions like this. But okay, now what I'm doing right here, because I'm stamping it out in black, the darkest color that I could possibly stamp this in, I'm getting rid of this edge right up here. Not completely, but what you're doing is you're wiping off a pretty good portion of this edge area. Okay, so I'm going into it about like a half an inch. Now you don't want to give it like this type of wipe right here where you're just kind of creating like another really harsh line right there. You're kind of dabbing down a little bit like that so that when you stamp it out, this area up here is just kind of stamping lighter, okay? So it's transitioning from kind of dry ink to wetter ink down here, okay? And it looks like that, all right? So let's do that around the entire perimeter. Have the billows always kind of facing in like that. You can barely see it up there because it's kind of stamped in a darker area. And then when you're stamping onto this vintage paper, the vintage paper is really kind of really absorbent. So you're not really getting like true black. That's more of like a, I don't know, whatever, 80% gray maybe. All right. So see how soft that can look right there? And it's because I've wiped that off right there. And that's why there's all this texture up here. And the top, this design isn't just design where I have like lines, like dots or something like that, right on the edge of the cloud. Because if that existed, when we stamped it out, they would stamp with this harsh line as opposed to kind of just fading out like that or dissipating. Okay. So you have to have that stability of the dots like that. They're still there, but they're very faint, and that's what's describing that edge right there. The edge of the form. Okay, now right around in here, I might go for a little tweak here. I might kind of do a little bit more of a definitive kind of line like that. And you're saying, hey, you know, you just said not to. But the thing is, I'm stamping it in this really super dark area like this, okay? And so I need to keep a little bit more ink probably on it for it to even show up, if it even does show up in this dark field right here. Yeah, okay, it does a little bit right in there, okay? I mean, this, you can just leave it like that too. You don't have to kind of close off every, you know, edge right in there, or perimeter. But just for exercise sake right here, I'll do the whole thing. Like I said, I think that looks pretty good open like that. And often I do have openings around the edge like that. But there you have it right there. And also, one of the things about kind of this transitioning edge right here, where it's wetter in here and drier up here, is now it really reinforces this idea of light coming from in here, because the edges of the clouds where he wiped them off are lighter and the area around it is darker. So it took care of the entire kind of framing and vignette in a way. All right, let's see, what should we stamp in here? I thought about doing like a, I don't know, something that might be kind of a little bit less conventional. I've kind of done stuff like this in the past, but they say there's like horses. You can have these horses kind of like coming out of the, you know, the clouds or something like that. That would be kind of interesting. Or we can do anything like this, like a castle like that could be up in here. You know, I'd probably go down here and I would probably leave room for like a word stamp or something like that up there. Here's the ferryman like that right in here. You know, you could leave room for like a quote up here. You know, like have a nice day or something like that would be cool. Let's do this one here. I really enjoy doing this image. And then I was thinking I can put like this little glowing little orb right in there maybe. Wish you were here, you know. Okay, they used to have a catalog, but they were bought by another kind of several years ago and changed their name. Who bought them? But I need a catalog. Whew. Okay, now no one's responded here. I don't know. What you can do is, I'm sure you went on and did a search online, but you can go into like rubber stamp history or something like that. Or, okay, I'm kind of wiping off the bottom right here to transition that shadow area. I wonder if I took off too much. Oh, wait. Let's see here. Let's go like this. He's looking that way, so I was going to have him over here, but he's looking this way, so I'm going to put like this little moon right in there. So, you know, you've seen me use this stamp before, but here's like a really minimal type of approach to it. And let's do a white pigment ink. Yeah, so you can check out like Rubber Stamp Madness, like what was that page on their website? Like where are they now or something like that, or all right, I already have this hole here ready to go. Let's do that right here. And you might be saying, what's the difference between this pad and this pad? They're the exact same, but I have this one right here that I use my cotton ball in. And this one right here I use for typically stamping stamps out in this one. The reason why I use the same one for years, but I was like, I'm using like cotton balls in here all the time. So this gets a little bit fuzzy until I scrape it off, when I'm re-inking it. So I don't like to use my cotton ball in my impression one because I ink up on there and I stamp it out and it's got like little cotton ball kind of hairs in it a lot of times. So I don't know, at one point in time I got around to just getting a second one. I don't stamp out too many things in this one. It's typically like word stamps on like foil or something like that, or reverse text in dark areas within a scene. All right, something like that. Okay, I have it transitioning, but I need a little bit more on the bottom, I think. That. All right. And just a real kind of minimalist piece like that. Let's do something though, okay? Okay, so this is just two stamps right there. And it's really focusing, it really brings the viewer's attention to, the figure, of course, the less imagery you have in it. The number of, whatever, the amount of content you have in, any given composition, there's going to be kind of, somewhat of a hierarchy of attention. So the less you have of it, of course, it'll direct the viewer's eye to, I don't know, in this case, it's probably this moon right here. So there's kind of this dialogue going back and forth, or not dialogue, but visual path. But let's add in a little bit of subtle textures right in here. Like that. And I think that anchors it down pretty well. No, like a lot of these minimal things, to me, I would frame this off, and I think I would put, like some sort of word stamp up here, stamped down on something else, and I would put it up there. Same thing with something like this. These things kind of remind me of, some sort of like product or something like that, or like a magazine cover or something like that, where you'd have something else in there, in an area, or it could be like down here or something like that. You can have like 3 word stamps. It's like a little kind of layout for some spread. It could be a cover, or it could be an interior page. All right, let's check out this cloud again. I really wanted to see that cloud. I've been thinking about, sometimes when I'm doing these compositions, I'm thinking about these clouds in use at times. I want to see what that one looks like with the, the horses coming out of the clouds or something like that. I was just kind of curious to see if it would kind of have a little bit more of an ominous type of look to it. Maybe this page right here, this piece of vintage paper is a little bit too light. But the other place, Froggy Fresh 2 on that, I don't know, you can look at like, I don't know if it's like a rubber stamp history thing, but yeah, okay, let's go with this one. This one's the suede paper. Like Stamp Junkie is just something like that. They got that Stamp Junkies on Facebook. It's like has like 20,000 members on it or something like that. Someone always knows, whatever the lowdown of that. Hello, Zealous Est. Did the Blue Mountain stamps have a celestial and fairy images? Hello, Caroline. Oh, that sounds familiar now, Froggy Fresh. Yeah. Yeah, but the Rubber Stamp Madness, Where Are They Now page, it has like, it often has the, the lineage of a certain companies. If they were sold, it's like, okay, now, whoever makes those or something like that. like Gumbo Graphics. I think it was, I don't know, like Stamp Francisco was sold to someone, and then like Gumbo Graphics and Fruit Basket Up. I don't know, like a bunch of number of those companies sold to Stamp Francisco, and those types of things are mentioned in that on that page. Joan Ware started it, and then she gave the information, I think, to Rubber Stamp Madness. And so they probably update it because they, a lot of people, I'm sure, probably ask Rubber Stamp Madness, have asked them over the years, hey, who, do you know what happened to whatever? So if they just have it up on their page, they can just kind of refer people to it. All right, let's see here. Let's go like that. All right. And then coming up here, we're going into this darker area. So these horses will probably, if that's the image that I'm going to use on there, they're probably going to have a little bit of a different look in this kind of more over like a stormy type of cloud, configuration than on some sort of like sunset beach or something like that. So you can really change the kind of the feel of an image, the spirit of it, a lot of times by changing kind of the tones of your sky. If this is a sky, I don't know. It's like more like a vortex or something, or whatever. An opening to a different domain. Okay, so what I almost did right there, this is like pointing in the opposite direction. If you have the unmounted version or the cling foam version, you might kind of on the back of your stamp put an arrow, that's pointing in the direction of the the lighting for there. So some people do that, and that's what I've done on my unmounted one as well. I mean, I can tell because I can see this little thing and I can see which way the billows are pointing, but someone doesn't use their image as much as me. I'm really familiar with this cloud, but I still put it, I said, that was a great idea by them. So okay, so that one right there, I just did that another impression right there, just a really super light one, because I'm gonna have those horses kind of running this way. And let's do this right here. Okay, these are some solid kind of shadows down there, so I want them here, but I don't want those shadows to go right over the top of those clouds right there, so I'll be careful to not ink those up beyond a certain spot, I think. Okay, let's just use this one right here. Too big of a block for this image, but I have images on my other blocks here. All right. Transition those shadows a little bit. I didn't do the bottom of the shadows right there because it's going to go way into those clouds. But I'll at least take off, I'm probably taking off at least 50% of the ink, but it's more like, it's probably like 70% right there. I think I'll even take off some of these shadows right here. They're supposed to be like running in the water, so I have these splashes down there. I'll even take off some off their legs, I think. I'll transition that a lot. I'm going to take off more than I was thinking about earlier. Kind of standing up a little bit to get a little bit more pressure on this. You're stamping into the that printer ink paper So I have that right there. And again, like a little quote stamp or something like that. I'm going to probably mat this off with some gold around it. And I would probably stamp some sort of word stamp or something like that. And then, you know, put that in a little bit of a gold and put it down there. Or maybe down here would be better, huh? Like a word stamp right in here. Okay, so that's that. And then let's create a little bit more of a vignette. The clouds kind of handle a lot of that, but let's do a little bit more around here like this and really close this off, especially around the edges. Like that. Yeah. Blue Mountain doesn't stand out to me too much. Either. Did they used to advertise? Have they been around for a long time? They probably were. I wonder if they were like in you know, like ads and Rubber Stamp Madness or something. But I'm really surprised someone here doesn't know the answer to that. It's like I can answer anything on these live streams practically, not just stamping related, but just anything. You know, how does you know phosphorescent you know animals work, or so, you know, stuff like that. You know, someone always kind of knows that type of stuff. All right, so anyways, there is just a really minimal type of composition right there using 2 stamps and a little bit of tone. And we'll go in and add some of this texturing below. I don't know if I should do that. Maybe they're supposed to be just like, you know, whatever coming out of the background like that. But like I said, you know, these types of things, or you know, it'd be kind of interesting to see with this. Let me see if I have a piece here. Okay, I wouldn't use. This is like I have like tropical palm, you know, palm fronds down there. But let me see what this one would look like that. In a reflection card. It kind of looks weird a little bit with these clouds right here reflecting on here. It'd be like the horses would be kind of lower like that, but still looks pretty interesting like that, you know. I feel like so. If you did something in a reflection card format like this with, you know, some characters like that, one of the things that's pretty cool to do is you can stamp on this stock right here. See, if I was doing this in a reflection card, I would have those horses lower so that those are higher up in the lower section. But what's really fun, though, is you can stamp on this foil in some sort of ink that's going to dry on there. Like a StazOn will adhere to it if there's like a gold StazOn. I don't know if there is. StazOn has a white pigment, but I haven't used that one enough because I need to get a reinker for it. But I can stamp on here with gold or white Brilliance ink. It'll dry on there, but then you have to spray seal it. But it looks like the words are floating on there, and I think this would be a really good candidate for, you know, whatever floating text down here. I think that'd be pretty cool. Anyway, all right, let me see what this one looks like right here too. Yeah, see, I would put that character right here down here so that they're reflecting right on the edge of that. But you know, that looks pretty cool like that. I usually don't do vertical pieces for reflection cards though, because I like all the reflective types of elements a little bit lower. So landscape work usually works best. All right, so that, let's see. So let's do something kind of minimal here. Well, you know, when I was doing those Chinese ink painting type of things, those things are kind of minimal too, because you leave all this space in between your elements, and it represents like fog or mist or something like that. And I really like that look too. But let's do something with, okay, here's a really long piece again. Should we go with that cloud again? Let's use that cloud, but let's use it a little bit differently here. I'll use it to kind of designate, I don't know, whatever, like different spaces in here, but we'll try to keep it really minimal in here and not fill it in too much of it all. Okay. One thing about these pieces like this is that you certainly can crank them out. I guess I'm not really done with those. I should, you know, I want to add in some kind of word stamps that'll accompany it. Not listed. Okay. Yeah. On the rubber stamp mat, just look in that that section though. That's I don't know. I tend to think of it. It's like where are they now or something like that. See the where are they now listing. Unless did anyone else look at that? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The stamping history group. Might have some information on that too. I was shocked. You know, I thought, I don't know if that's a word for it, but someone posted this stamp company that was around in the 70s and early 80s, and really super professional looking images. I forgot his name. But I looked him up, and I don't know. I found some information on kind of this artist that had this company. But yeah, that's what I really like, that rubber stamp history group. Like I thought I'd kind of, you know, I mean, I don't know every stamp company that's ever existed out there, but especially if those older ones, like from the 80s or something like that, I would have thought I would have at least heard of them before, which I did not. Okay, so that's the top portion up here. So I was thinking about going around the whole thing, but let's use this. Let's put some object right up there. This will be my midground. Okay, let's use this like this. This black is almost stamping out too dark, man. It's like I thought I took off a lot of ink, but I didn't. It's like a little bit of a harsh edge right there. Yeah, sometimes you think you take off like enough, and it's still fairly you know, distinct, those edges. Okay, like that. And then let's go down here. Right in here. Let's go right in here. Advertised in that issue. Oh. Oh, 1999. Yeah, yeah. Always, that's the one magazine that I consistently advertised in. And then, I don't know, sometimes through the years, it was like, the Rubber Stamper magazine. And then there was like one or two other magazines out there. And some of them I advertised in, but I advertised in those magazines within another advertisement. What was that? What was that? Addicted to Rubber Stamps. Yeah, that was that big online entity for stamps. And what they would do is they would have I don't know what it was, like a 8-page spread advertisement that they would take out. And then what you would do is on the perimeter, it said addicted to rubber stamps. And what they would have, they would ask if you wanted to, would you want to take out an ad in whatever, the Rubber Stamper magazine or something like that. And then you would submit your ads to Addicted to Rubber Stamps, and then they would lay it out within their ad, and they would submit it to, the Rubber Stamper. So it was kind of odd because they were fine with you doing anything. You can put, anything in your ad. They were advertising Addicted to Rubber Stamps. So, I mean, sometimes I didn't do it because it felt kind of weird. Because when you'd say stuff like, in your ad, you can say stuff like, okay, for information, which I did, I'd say something like, for information. Here, I just did this last week. I'm going to use this same castle again here. You'd say, visit, whatever, Stampscapes.com. But they were completely fine with it. It was just like anything goes. Yeah, so I had a lot of ads in those other magazines, but it wasn't with those magazines. I didn't take out the ad in the magazines themselves. So, I don't know, some of those advertisements back then might have been, I don't know, for a quarter-page ad, it might have been like $700 or something like that, but you'd put it within the confines of the Addicted to Rubber Stamps advertisement. Here's this haunted kind of little, castle-y church or something like that. And it might be, I don't know, like $150 or something like that. And those some of those magazines back then, they were by the major publishers, okay? So they weren't like stamping enthusiasts or anything, or crafting enthusiasts that put together these types of magazines, like Somerset Studio and all that. Kelleen, she was a stamper, and hobbyist and all that. She loved all that stuff, but these other ones were just these major publishers that said, hey, we got to get on this bandwagon here, which is good for the industry too. But just having more choice. But what I'm getting at was their advertising salespeople were really aggressive and really, really, they were calling you all the time. Which, I don't know, that's their job. So, I mean, but it was, it got to be a little bit much. So it was nice to be able to say, hey, I'm already going to be in the magazine. I'm working with Addicted to Rubber Stamps. So anyways, there's a little bit of a, industry advertising rubber stamp history for you, oral history right there. Okay, so again, these little clouds like that, just kind of framing things off, and we'll just do this kind of more minimal type of thing. I'm going to try to connect this up together a little bit. I don't know, my cloud stamped out a little bit too harsh though. So I'll see if I can kind of bring this in more of this airy type of look, but I might have to combine everything together a little bit more in the end. bridge impressions, but they sold to someone else. Okay. Huh. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the one of the reasons. This is like the big reason why I started that rubber stamp history thing. Because there's a lot of like information on with that's just been like completely lost. And for a certain period of time, a long period of time, the with the stamping industry community, you know, people weren't walking around. Everyone wasn't walking around with a with a phone, with a camera, on their phones and stuff like that. So there's just like there was like no photographs of posted of like big conventions like the Carson show or something like that. No video, of course. And I mean, some people took around cameras and things like that to take photos of cards and samples and stuff like that. It's kind of always amazing to me that kind of in a way that a lot of booths at conventions, they would say like no photos allowed. It's because they were worried about people kind of stealing their ideas or something like that, which is kind of understandable. But I don't know. You go to like a convention, you can't take photos, But yeah, so like Stampa Barbara, biggest kind of rubber stamp kind of store entity maybe of all time, just for stamps. Though there's been bigger stores that had rubber stamps and all the accessories, but the in terms of the old school kind of stamp store where it's 90% just only stamps. Okay, there was just like no information of that out there. There's like one photo on the internet of that store, and it's just some guy kind of standing out in front of the store, like they just got there or something like that. So there was like no interior shots. And not only that, Gary Dorothy, the owner of Stampa Barbara, who is a professional photographer now, he owns a Pictureville in Palm Springs. I asked him, through an email. It's like, I've contacted him, a couple times through the years. And if he had some photos, just so we can get some pictures of it. And he didn't even have any photos of it. His stores. He had three of them. So if anyone has any kind of like whatever historical types of photos, info, things that you want to post, get on the Facebook, find rubber stamp history. Is it rubber stamp history or is it rubber stamping history? I can't remember. And get post away. All right, this isn't like that minimal here. I need to throw it, some shading around this and stuff like that too. But let's see. I'm looking at that this Sasquatch here, and it now I'm immediately thinking of Linda B's gigantic monster map piece where he's got that it's like a procession of all these people going to like a like a Halloween party or something like that, and it's like out in the background, like even Bigfoot's walking over to it. Okay, let's see here. All right, I'll put that little character right up there. Give that like so. I'm going to try to keep this in the spirit of a minimalist type of approach right here, and I'm just going to throw some shadows down here. I need to transition this one. That cloud right there is looking pretty bad, actually. Let me do this right here. Let me just add on one more. I'm going to take off a lot of the ink in here. I'm kind of wiping it off right up here and right below there like that. And let's get a little bit of this right in here. Like about like that. That's a little bit better. It'll just make it easier for me to kind of blend in some tones in here. Let's do this right here too. This will make it a little bit faster as well. Okay, I'm starting to boil in my studio lights here. Blue Ridge Impressions, but they so. Oh yeah, yeah. Cynthia, do you know what it's called? I don't know. She probably doesn't know who that they sold to someone else. But yeah. Post and rubber stamp history there, and maybe Stamp Junkies. See if anyone's got the get the lowdown on that. And then someone can even, if you really feel like it, drop Rubber Stamp Madness in there and say, hey, by the way, for your, where are they now section, you can, update that, the Blue Ridge impressions to, that's the name of the company, Froggy Fresh Blue Ridge Impressions. If you find out who has them now, you can tell Rubber Stamp Madness for that page of theirs. Okay, so just kind of closing this in with a little bit of a vignette around the sides like that. All right. And let's take a black pencil and add in a little bit of shadow work in here. About like so. Speaking of rubber stamp history, I noticed it a lot of times through the years. A lot of people remember their first rubber stamps that they bought. I guess if you're a stamper, that could be kind of like a significant milestone. Does everyone remember kind of their first rubber stamps that they've purchased, or where it was? Like a lot of people, if they were introduced to rubber stamps through like Stampin' Up or something like that, a lot of times that one's an easy one. I think for me, I was working for a Stamp the Hand company, just kind of helping them out with things like production. I wasn't like designing stamps for them, like like a lot of people would probably assume or something like that. That was like rare. to be designing stamps for them, because they would release stamps, I don't know, every once in a while, and they didn't even know I drew, until I was there for, I don't know, a little while. But I think at a convention that I went to, the Carson show, I think I had a little bit of time for some reason, and I think my first stamp, I'm not sure. I'm not including like stamps that I got as like in childhood, like a little kid, but it was an ant, and I think it was by, if that is the one, it was by the stamp company called Good Stamp Goods. All right, so here's a little bit of tone on this one right here. Is that black ink dry enough? I hope so. Let's add a little bit of tone around here. See that right here by his head, that tombstone right there? It kind of, oh, I went over his head here. Those tombstones in the background kind of are a little bit distracting from his head, so I blotted that out. I pushed those tombstones back a little ways so that the silhouette of his hat there would show up a little bit more or better in terms of the form. All right, so let's try to soften up some of these edges right here too. So I knock those edges down like about 10%, like that. Now, if those black little dots right here, if that edge stamped out, like this dark right here, it would take a lot of white pigment ink, so, I might not want to do that, but just kind of putting a little bit of dabs down on there is pretty easy to do, and it's really fast. So there's all kinds of little things you can do if your impression quality doesn't come out exactly like you'd want, or even close to, like in this case, but you can go back and I always tell people, I was just telling someone recently, kind of telling them the strategies that I use with white pigment ink. But it's not only just to kind of add extra atmosphere and lighting and texture and all that fun stuff, but it's sometimes it's like a repair tool that can like save whole cards or areas of your cards. I know it does on mine a lot. So anyway, a lot of clouds right in there, so they're kind of filling in. And they're doing a lot of the work in here, in terms of just framing and just giving a little bit of different type of, whatever vibe to the, especially around on the exteriors like that. All right. So it's a little bit of a different feel. Let me see. I'm looking for it. Okay. I don't know where. Okay, I'm not going to bother going and find it, but I was going to show you a kind of a piece without the clouds that was similar composition. I need to go through and organize some of my latest pieces, but this is like on the vintage paper right here. So these clouds are just these little billowy types of things. These clouds could have been used up here too, but that's just kind of without. No, I mean, this scene isn't like perfect for those clouds in there because, we already have these forms up there, but just in terms of a framing device, having those clouds in there, it can kind of add to that little misty type of feel. So I use these clouds. It's not just for skies. Okay, you can use them at the base of things like waterfalls and things like that. Like, I often have like a waterfall coming down and I'll put these little billows down there, to represent kind of more of a, like a stylized mist or something like that. Okay, let's see. What do we have here? An hour. Let me do one more kind of little piece right here. And let's do, what should I do here in terms of subject? Let's go back to kind of winter. And let's just do something. Let's see. Let's do that set number 50. I forgot what number set this is. 52 here. And let's go with do I want to do this right now? Let me see how fast. I haven't done one of these in a while. Let me see if I can do that northern light type of thing really fast. Okay, so I'm switching out. I'm switching over to glossy cardstock because it's just going to be easier for me. Because it's less absorbent. But let's do this right here. I'll give it a shot. So we'll just go like a one stamp type of thing right here. Okay, so this cabin's going to be down right in here. All right. And then we'll have this kind of northern light type of scenario going up top here. All right. So let's see. Let's expedite it a little bit too. Let me use a little bit of a warm tone in here. I'm going to have it mostly green tones, but let's do this right here. If we add in some warmth like this, this is peach Bellini, but if you have like a distressed brown ink, you know, one of those brown tones, again, I always mention this, but antique linen, old paper, walnut, something like that, that's a really fantastic base coat. Even for like cool tone scenes, like if you're doing like an all blue winter scene or something like that old paper would be a really nice kind of warm base layer for you to use, okay? Okay, so I was just talking about someone about this type of application of base coat colors like this. So she was doing this type of thing, but on matte paper, you know, this is like matte on this side, but it's really going to absorb into the paper really fast. But just to show you that, you know, how, you know, you can still get a really easy, you know, pretty graceful transitioning color application on a very absorbent matte side of the paper. See, this is like single side glossy right here. You can see how it's really grabbed the ink a lot faster like that. But she was saying that it was kind of a, you know, it was a real struggle. And because if you don't have a lot of ink on your, you know, your applicator like that, you might streak in like this and it's just going to give you, it's almost like going onto your paper with like a marker or something like that, just direct. It's not going to have this kind of more feathered type of approach by starting off with, you know, something that's a little bit more sopping wet like that. Okay. So again, benefits of the reinkers and having a lot of ink on your applicator that you're using. Okay. All right. Let's do this too. So I have this green right here. I think this is the same green right here. Yeah, this is a light green. So she doesn't have a lot of ink pads yet either. Okay. She has like spattering of you know, different types, and she's doing like really well with them. But I said just in terms of the layered style of ink applications, if you want to supplement some of your inks that you had, you don't even need to go for the pad. Just buy the re-inker, and if it's not going to be an ink that you are stamping out imagery in, and you're just using that ink to color, then why not just go for the re-inker, you know, if you want to get more colors. You don't have to buy the, you know, the pad and re-inker. Okay, I'm blending in a little bit with this dry side like that. Okay, I'm going to be a little more selective with my darker tones here. Okay, I'm going to use the same pad like this, but let's go into a darker green. It's like a, I don't know, whatever, like a forest green like that. And it's really applying really gracefully because the paper itself is a little bit moist. Okay. So you kind of apply it at a slower rate because, you know, as you drag in here, the darker tone is going to stay darker longer. Well, first of all, because it's darker, but second of all, because this paper is moist, so this ink isn't transferring, absorbing in this paper as fast as, you know, the first, you know, couple colors that you've used. If it's really dry out and arid, and if you're doing this in whatever, an arid type of environment, then you might have to go back and add in some of your lighter tones right back over that because the inks are drying so fast that, you know, when you're trying to gracefully apply it like that, it might be kind of grabbing a little bit, you know, and giving you some sort of, you know, mark that just won't budge. Okay, so you just re-moisten with some of those lighter tones again, and then you'll be able to get more of a graceful look. But the thing is just, you know, if see, I'm using this with a drier touch like that so I can get this nice graceful application. This is just some copy paper right here. Okay, so just kind of use a lighter touch and just you know, barely touch the page, and then you're just staying in one area, not trying to do this whole thing like instantly. Okay, so just kind of work an area and you'll have a much easier time with those transitions. All right, that is the pine green. Let's see, bottle green. Bottle green's getting pretty dark right here. I usually go back in and I fill this type of thing in, but I'll see what it looks like with the image stamped in there. I'm kind of coming up from the bottom a little bit just to fill in some of that area, just because I know that cabin's going to be on there. I'll be doing some little tweaks in there probably later too. Okay, so that is bottle green. Pretty dark. It's not as dark as if I just used it directly on a piece of paper like that because I'm going through all these other colors right here. And it's not transferring completely because it's applying wet into wet. Okay. And all right, my Marvy black is kind of toast because that the pad is kind of, you know, like breaking down here. But it's fine for just ink applications like this. I can use this for my ink, and it's probably not good for impressions anymore. Which, I don't know, in a way that's kind of good because it gets me not using that. I always like, my favorite pad to ink, to stamp my impressions in was Marvy Black, but they discontinued that a long time ago, and everyone's sold out of Marvy Black re-inkers. And the pad was sold out a long time ago, but yeah, the re-inkers have been gone for a while too. So it's a nice thin black ink, but very dark, so it would penetrate these other layers very well. Okay. You might be doing it with thicker inks, this type of technique right here, where it's like, hey, nothing, it doesn't seem like it's applying at all. It's because everything's too dry, wet, and you need to let it set up a little bit, and then just go back in and add on after the inks have dried. Not completely, but just, you know, so it's not so sopping wet. But anyways, there's a background right there, and I'll add in some additional ink in here too. After I stamp this out, I need to get kind of like bearings on how that image is going to look on there. But again, you know, like I said, it's like kind of like a minimal approach to the actual imagery on your pieces. Let me see, should I stamp this one out? And I usually don't do this right here, but I'm going to stamp it out in stays on, I think. Because if I stamp it out in this right here, and if I ink over it, the top of it's going to totally smear. I could use this one right here, my hybrid, if I'm just going to stamp on there and just leave it and not do anything else to it. But where's my stay? I'm looking for my stays on re-inker. Oh, here we go. Oops. I need to scroll down here. I scrolled up. I haven't been seeing what anyone's been typing here. Okay. Hello, Allie. Good to see you. Allie, what time is it there for you? I don't have a giant mushroom stamp. Okay, here we go right here with the stays on impression here. It's because I'm probably going to want to come in here and add a little bit more tone in there. But let's see what this looks like right here. Okay, let's go all the way to the bottom right here. Still getting used to this kind of mindset of the kind of more of a minimal type of composition, you know, just with a, you know, it didn't have to be a certain number of stamps. I mean, we're doing 11 by 17 and we stamp out, you know, 10 images on it or something like that, or 10 impressions. That's going to look really minimal probably. So it just depends on the space that we're kind of dealing with. You know, on something like this, I like a lot of like solid trees a lot of times. You know, to really contrast against those beams. So, you know, those are kind of minimal too. You know, just stamping out a few trees. But, like, just in terms of the imagery too, if you don't have a lot of time, you know, these little compositions like this. One of the things I should do, you know, I haven't gotten around to, but sometimes I think I need to do a bunch of like word stamps stamped out and just ready to go. I already have them cut out and kind of framed. Every time I do on those, I use them up like really fast. All right, so there's that. And again, a perfect spot for like some little word stamp or quote stamp up there. Let's do this too. Okay, this was my black right here. Yeah, I don't like to do too much masking. I try to avoid masking as much as possible. Tedious masking, like the simple, like paper towel, you know, kind of masked off type of thing. We'll do that, but one of the other things I was thinking about doing today, because I haven't just done it for a while, is a vellum fall piece. I love doing that with like the birch trees or something like that. And that whole kind of vellum technique is a way to really get stuff behind things and layered. And again, without having to mask anything off. I guess in a way it is, you know, form of masking, but not like traditional masking of covering things up and then whatever, coloring or stamping over them. I don't like doing that too much. I mean, I will if I have to, but I'll usually try to work around it. The techniques are kind of developed, you know, with the avoidance of a lot of that. Okay, let's do this right here. Let's come back into here a little bit now. Here's the things that you can do too. See, I started off, with the, well, we did it with the, what was that peach Bellini right here. So you can't even really see that peach Bellini anymore. But there, I don't know if you can see, there's a little tiny bit of like an extra warmth right in here. See, this is like white right here, okay? But do you see that like really pale kind of, difference there? I mean, it's barely anything. It's, from here to here. But see that little peach Bellini in there? That's giving it that extra glow. So it's barely discernible, but that little thing in there can give it that extra little kick, And you can do it afterwards too. It's like if you ever do anything where you have like open space, and if your colors are looking just kind of a little bit anemic, it's like it needs a little bit of pop or something like that. You can come back in there after the fact and just add it in there right over the top of it. If you add a light color over a dark one, it's not going to make that dark color look lighter, in terms of the usage of transparent color. Here, let me, speaking of, let's come do this right here. Here, I'll add a little bit more of this one right here. And it doesn't have to be, I'm talking about dye-based inks for the most part, and this layered process. It doesn't have to be this brand, you can just go for any light color. So like a tan, type of color. Okay, you see that? I don't know if you can see that right there. Like I said, I mean, this is a really light tone, but do you see that kind of happening right there? I just put it right here and not right here, but do you see that little strip right there? And this is it's kind of cool because it's a little bit orangish too. You wouldn't think about using oranges with grains like here, but the value is light enough. You can have the benefit of kind of merging out into a separate hue, kind of like in the color wheel. It's almost like doing that. So you get a little bit more of what you call this color glow. Or I don't know, orange across from green. Are those complementary colors? If you have complementary colors next to each other, it creates a color vibration. Analogous colors create a color glow. So like these range of green tones like that, kind of going into the yellow green, it kind of creates a little bit of a glow. But, kind of going in like something like that. Here, I kind of went a little bit more like visible. That's going to dry lighter than that, but see the little thing like that did? And then I left this other side just as is, just for a little bit of contrast like that. But you can kind of add it up and use other areas like this. It's not, now this is just for dye-based inks. If you're doing colored pencil work too, if you're doing like some grassy area and you have greens, you can come into it with like a tan. I often do brown tones. But see, that's the thing that makes that kind of glowy kind of difference there. See, I'm kind of coming back into it with more of this green in here. Okay. Now, if you're using glossy cardstock and these dye-based inks right here, what you do is you spray seal this, preferably before it dries. I have a tendency to think that it retains a little bit more of that intensity and glow rather than letting this dry and then spraying it. Sometimes it looks, it doesn't have that intensity as the wet ink on there. But I don't know. I don't know if it's a fact, but I tend to think that you retain a little bit more of that intensity if you just get it before it dries. Okay, let's see. Allie, I can get the Marva inks for you here in Australia. Contrast. 11:20 a.m. Okay. I Googled Blue Ridge Impressions is now Purple Daisy design. There. Glad that was discovered there. Or whatever. Glad I got that one figured out there. Oh, you have Zealous S. Do you have the Good Stamp Goods? Like, you mean the cover there? You're gonna share the cover of that one? Okay, let's see. What was that now? Is Marvy? No, Marvy is not made in Australia. Marvy's a new cheetah brand. They're made in Japan. Yeah, Paul, you're right. The Marvy ink pads. Marvy inks just are toast. Okay, so the ink pads were the first ones to go, and then the matchables went. I mean, the Marvy pens, brush markers went, and then there was still some Marvy re-inkers out there. Yeah, these pads. I mean, certain colors. Like I might re-ink like this light green here with this one. I mean, this thing's like I've had this probably for 30 years on my desk, and this thing's like it's like down to right here, you know, because I'm not using a huge amount of it. And this, these inks stay fairly moist for a long time. So, anyways, they had a lot of these colors, these re-inkers, because they probably made like they manufactured, I'm guessing, like 1,000 at a time. And I use colors a lot, these pads. Now, I was using a lot more, when I was going around, and, those were the workshop pads, and at convention demonstrations. Okay, I'm just kind of going back in. So some of those streaks went down here, like right through the rooftop and into the windows here. I want those windows to kind of remain nice and light. Okay. So I'm going back in and reclaiming some of that lightness, like on this rail here. I'm just, I mean, you can just choose whatever you want, but you can put some highlights on your trees like this in here, some snowy highlights. I don't have to go too much in here because you can see that white really stands out in those darker trees like that. Now this one's like, this would be, I left a lot of space up here just because it's focusing on the northern light type of thing. But again, that would be a perfect spot for like a quote stamp. The one that I use with my northern light type of thing a lot of times, especially if I do the northern light in the kind of more of that warmer tone. I like that quote that says, love must be a light as much as a flame. So that would be kind of cool right here. But let's do this right here. So just real minimal, image and word stamp or something like that would be more than sufficient here. I mean, you can, okay, so I'm doing this on this one right here. You're going to say, hey, Kevin, you should have done on that one right here. But you can do that thing on this type of thing. You can put that cloudy kind of texturing in here with the white pigment ink on the cotton ball. Takes a little practice, and then you can stamp with the, not StazOn, I don't think, because that'll lift the white that you lay down here. But then if you stamp out your image in black brilliance on top of that, make sure it's nice and juicy, and then lift it off, and then you wait for that to all dry, and then you spray seal it. And that's another use of like a really minimal, type of composition right there, where the background, is taking, doing all the work for you in terms of creating kind of a dynamic, kind of visual. You're just kind of accentuating it with stamps in, many ways where, like this one right here, the background is, the thing that's kind of the star of the, the show. So again, if you don't have it doesn't have to be because you don't have time, but if you don't have time, these are the perfect types of little things to do. It doesn't have to be these big elaborate types of scenes that that we also like doing. All right, monster maps. Everything doesn't it doesn't have to be, except for Linda, a monster map with. She did on our monster map. There were 382 stamped impressions on that 11 by 17 piece, which I think is in the Guinness Book of World Records. All right, so adding in a little bit of star effects in here. You can see how that really, and you do this too. You can splatter paint this type of thing onto your holographics, and it really kind of, it doesn't stabilize it completely, but it helps to have some of these static forms up there like that in that type of really kind of crazy holographic background like that. But even on something like this, where this is kind of, you know, these little feathered types of things are kind of it's kind of like an implied movement. It can really kind of stabilize things up there. Now, I would add a little bit of white pigment to that, but I don't want to do that right now because some of my pen dots are still a little bit moist. But anyways, again, just some really, relatively quick compositions just by not kind of linking up like every type of image in your scenes fully with texture. I don't know. I guess, my link here is just putting a little bit of that pebbly thing down here, which I would normally do on something like this too. I would add in some additional foreground in there, like overhanging things, I like doing all those little types of kind of little tricks on my scenes. Of course, this is like a, kind of like an extreme example of that. But yeah, the foreground imagery on there, like that. And then from below, that little grassy area, additional textures kind of linking up everything. But if you kind of leave those out on your compositions, it gives your kind of viewer a little bit more time. There's more there's more like visual breathing space, Maybe not this one's not a good example, but this one a little bit more. Yeah, in the tradition of these types of things like this. I mean, even this one's a little bit more elaborate because I spend a little bit more time with texturing and everything like that in there, but just kind of leaving those gaps in there like that. Within your imagery, so. But that being said, like I said, when I do that though, I feel like I'm kind of like craving, like some word stamp or something like that in there. I think it's kind of perfect for that type of application, where, some of the more kind of elaborate ones with, stuff filled in from edge to edge, it doesn't leave a lot of room for like text. So anyway, yeah, some word stamp or something like that would finish these ones off really nicely. This one right here, I don't know. This one would be, if I put in some text, I would maybe have like a few different types of things. Maybe like where you have like a word here, and like up there or something like that. It's one of those things I learned in being in like the yearbook staff in high school. It's like, oh, we can add like text anywhere? Moment of enlightenment. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so Ali asked, he said, but we can buy here. Did you say you can get those Marvy inks there, Ali? Or did we talk about that before? So one of the things is, okay, so, doing these things like these colors, like these really light, pale colors, someone was mentioning, they getting, like some really fluid, easy kind of application movement into their things like skies or something like that. But if you have like I would say like a warm tone color like this, it would be similar to something like a sepia. If you were a watercolorist or something like that. That's what we did. I learned all this like in oil painting classes. Like if you lay down like this warm tone over your entire canvas before you even start painting on there, it really gave you a good head start. But then if you have like a yellow would be good too. Basically the primary colors, okay? But I add in like a warmer kind of like a sepia, like a earthy tone into the mix because I use those on all kinds of different base coats. But a blue and like a pale pink or something like that would be good. And then a yellow because you can combine your blue with the yellow to form your green tones, and you can do the blue and the pink to form the violets, and what is there? The yellow and the pink to form your warmer tones, sunset, sunrises, that type of thing. But if you throw those types of things in there, as subtle and as practically invisible as it might look, but look at that right there, and that's like compared to this right here, that's white right there. So it can make a pretty big difference just in terms of depth in a, in like a extremely subtle application way like that. So I think it looked fine though without it, but it just looks so much more full with that in there. So the benefits of reinkers, and again, you don't have to do this kind of thing with the going in there with the, applying it with paper towels or something like that. You can use stipple brushes or something like that, or whatever types of blending brushes you might have. But I would suggest doing a nice thick layer of that base layer tone. Again, it can be practically invisible, but if you have a little bit of temperature to it, it just gives you a head start, for the entire process. And again, so this is like a Northern Lights like that, but if I was to do grassy textures across it, this way, this could look like a grassy field. I would, I'd tweak it a little bit, but it's the same type of application process and blending. All right, and again, if you do this, you just, if you're doing some sort of grassy terrain, I did it on this one right here, but then there's those warmer, sorry, my camera exposure's going nuts right here, but there's these warmer kind of textures in it. This is like too busy right here. But I put in some of these browner tones like in here, and I put in some of the green tones in this little area right in here. I need to make this a little bit less busy right there. Add a little bit more color to it. So anyway, let's see here. What is that there, Ellie? You have wombats in your yard every night. Hello, Yawning Greyhound. Good to see you. Thanks for making it. What paper did he use? Are you asking me, Paul? This is I think you're talking about this one right here. This is glossy cardstock probably that you're asking about. These two right here are your vintage, cheap kind of vintage, whatever, papers, just text weight. That's what it looks like on that side. That's what I started off with on those ones. These two right here are semi-gloss cardstocks. So semi-gloss cardstocks also go by the terms like satin or semi-gloss, satin, and dull. Wait, was that what it was called? Dull? I don't know. Different manufacturers call those something different. But and this one's glossy. Glossy is like the easiest one to do like that type of effect on. To do that little streaky thing because it's a little bit more slippery to apply that on. Okay, glossy cardstock too. I should note, not to be mistaken with glossy photo paper. Okay, you try this on glossy photo paper, it's curtains for you. Because glossy photo paper with dye-based inks, it's going to be grabbing the inks faster than like a matte paper. It's going to like dry the instant you put it on there because glossy photo paper has an emulsion coating on there that's designed to dry inkjet printer inks really fast. Glossy cardstocks, the type of cardstock that that they run through 4-color printing presses, for book covers and whatever, business cards and movie posters, that type of thing. Okay, clay coated, but with a gloss coating on there. This one, that you can get like chrome coats out there. I think chrome coats on Amazon, if I'm not mistaken. Different sellers, they drop out, so it's like sometimes I'll put a link up to those types of things, but then that seller's not there anymore, or it's no longer carried by that seller, or something like that. But I think it's out there. And glossy cardstock, oh my god, the Hamilco glossy cardstock is not glossy. It's more of the semi-gloss cardstock, like these ones. It's really excellent, but for a semi-gloss. But the Hamilco one on Amazon, yeah, don't think that you're getting that type of finish on there. It's going to be this type of finish right here. It's closer to matte than it is, glossy to me. If it's the same stuff that they've always been selling. So anyway, let's see. But I have got an account with the company that sells them. They also sell, they sell the pens too. If they sell those Marvy inks, they are discontinued, of course. So I don't know if you want a lot of those. The ones, the inks that if there's still some colors in Marvy that were really great for scenic stamping, the blue tones, the browns and greens, those would be excellent to get, especially if you can get just blank pads of some sort. Marvy sold the blank pads there for, I don't know, a couple of years after they discontinued the pads, but then they discontinued those ones. But they do sell, of course, blank ink pads that you just ink up yourself, but it's better probably for the Marvy inks if you can find a foam pad, blank foam pad, than the fabric ones, okay? I don't know if the fabric ones are going to hold the ink like the foam ones do, okay? Because Marvy inks are thinner than like all other brands of inks that make their inks thicker so that they don't spill out of the fabric style of pad. Allie, if you're ever thinking about getting any of those colors, Allie, drop me a note, or if you want to know which ones I would get, But if you can get some Marvy inks out there, like this one right here, this is one of the brighter like greens out there. So you can go with, let's say, a range of mementos or a range of Ranger distress inks or something like that, okay? It's just not going to be as bright as your Marvy one, but if you throw one Marvy into the mix of any other brand, you can have 10 other greens or something like that and blend them all on there. These ones are excellent for blending because they're thicker. But then if you want to get that real deep saturation, it's easier to do it with a Marvy ink. It's just the brightness of the Marvy inks are just, I don't know, I haven't found anything to be as bright as the Marvy equivalent version of a given hue. Okay, it might be brighter by like 25% a lot of times, if not more. All right. So if you can just throw something in the mix, that would be good. Like that. Like a yellow would be good for all of your green tones and all of your orange tones and stuff like that. Yellows or something like that. So if they have like this number 5 yellow, again, it's going for those types of primary colors you can always mix to achieve those other types of colors. So yeah, Chrome Coat, Kromekote is the name, and it's I'm using a 10-point cover stock, and it's CS1, so that means coated side 1 probably, or something like that. So you don't really need the double-sided glossy when you're buying glossy cardstocks. It gives it a stiffer feel, and it's really nice, but it's it's just so much more expensive for the double-sided glossy. So, you know, I'm matting my pieces up anyways, so you never really see the backside of it. Back in the old days when, you know, it might cost, you know, whatever, $5 to $7 more for a 200 pack, you know, ream of it, and the whole ream itself was like $25. So, you know, double sided might be 30. But nowadays it's like so much more expensive. You know, I would just get the bare, whatever, minimal needs for, you know, whatever the desired results. And even if it's a little bit cooler to stamp on a little bit of a thicker, like the 10 point to 12 point might not be as expensive, but the CS1, you know, is all I ever really needed on that. There's a little bit of a difference to it, like the double-sided glossy. It feels like it's sealed off a little bit more, even on each side. I don't know, I have a feeling that gloss kind of permeates or something like that, where it's not absorbing as much ink on the, you know, beyond the surface like that. But anyway, I just get the CS1. Unless you won the lottery, then get the CS2. Magazine cover, glossy cards. Okay, perfect, yeah. All right, so anyway, kind of a little bit more minimal. I don't know, when I look at these, I don't think they're kind of missing anything. They're missing a little bit of a quote stamp or something like that. But you can really crank some of these out like that by just, you know, putting that space in between things, not really worrying about it. But yeah. Yeah, on the toning of this one right here is just a little bit on the corners like that. So, you know, this one is, you know, putting together that paper, but you can, like I said, you can start off with, you know, an existing paper and just stamp that in there and just do a little bit of these different types of texturing things, and it'll bring everything together. So, all right, let's see. Have a great rest of evening. Go stamp out something. Try some minimal pieces. Linda, try to beat your record with those. Go for that 400 impression stamp scene. I was just joking with the Linda one, you know, but I don't know. Maybe you did do like 200 impressions on there or something like that. Check out Linda's pieces on Facebook and her Flickr account under her name, and everyone else's pieces, you know, if you got them posted or something like that. And if you haven't before and you feel inclined at some point in time, would love to see your pieces, you can share them on the Facebook, or like, you know, just create a free Flickr account or something like that and add them to the like the Stampscapes group or something like that, or just notify me or something like that, and I'll, you know, or if you have a Pinterest account or something like that, or Instagram, let us know. All right, everyone. Thanks again. Hope to see you on the next live.